Hey everybody, if you're thinking about moving to Vancouver, Washington, then there's so much you need to know before you come out. That's why in this video, I'm going to talk about the 7 top things that you need to know before you relocate out to Vancouver. So are you ready to join me? Let's go. Hey everybody, it's your host, Dave Baker here on the channel that's all about living in Vancouver, Washington. Now, if this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything about what it's like to live, to work, to eat, to sleep, and of course, to get outdoors in Southwest Washington or anywhere in the surrounding areas, whether it's Washougal, Camas, or Battlefield, Washington, you've got to tap that little subscribe button and click that little bell so that you'll be notified every time I put out a new video all about Southwest Washington. Of course, you know we've got that focus on Vancouver, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I am always talking to people about relocating to Vancouver, Washington. So if you're thinking about moving out to Vancouver itself, over to Washougal, or thinking of moving to Camas or Battlefield, Washington, or anywhere in the Southwest Washington area, get in touch. Send us a text message. Send us an email. Give us a call 24/7, day or night, because the team wants to help you with your move to Vancouver. It's an awesome place, and I love it myself, so we are passionate about helping you move. All right, let's start diving into the list. Now, if you're thinking about making a move somewhere, you have to do so much more than just look on a map and just say, oh, hey, that's close to a river, or that's close to a train track, or where is this place? You have to really get a feel for the city. And if you don't live right next door, then this is one of the best ways that you can learn all about moving to a certain place. So if you're thinking about making the move to the Couve, then this video is where we're going to get you started. Now, I'm going to talk about 7 key things that get my attention when I think about moving to Vancouver, Washington, or relocating to anywhere in the neighborhood, meaning some of the adjacent cities. Now, some of the key cities that are very close to Vancouver, Washington, on the Washington side of the Columbia River, are going to also be Washougal, Washington, Camas, Washington, and Battlefield. And lastly, Hazeldale, which are all surrounding the Vancouver, Washington central area. So let's get started. Number 1 is proximity to a big city. So Vancouver, Washington is on the Columbia River on the Washington side. Just south of there is, can you guess? Portland, Oregon. Okay. So Portland, Oregon is about 8 miles away. And that means that you get access to a fairly big city. Obviously, it's not a massive city, so if you're moving from New York to Washington or moving from Chicago to Washington, it's not the same. But here's the deal. When you live close to a bigger city, you get a lot of things that are readily available. If you come from a small town, you might know what I'm talking about, where you have to drive into the city and it takes you 45 minutes or an hour. I have a lot of acquaintances and friends who live in smaller towns, and they don't have the luxury of having the same level of convenience. Now, let me go into a little more detail. One great thing about having a larger city pretty close to you, but just living outside of it, is that you have entertainment. That means you're going to have events, right? You have sporting events right there in Portland. You've got the Portland Trail Blazers, of course. You've got a couple stadiums where you can see events. You've got, of course, also shopping, right? And shopping, of course, is available in a lot of places. But I'm talking about having a lot of shopping options. On top of that, you have a lot of food options and additional things that you can access, like big box stores or mainstream stores that you might not find conveniently located if you were to live far from a big city. For example, if you live in central Washington, you would have to drive either to Seattle or back down to Portland to get to some of the key stores that you might need or to find the services that you might need. Perhaps it's medical, perhaps you need dental services, you might need to just do other things, like find other professionals to help you with your daily life. So having that access is a nice touch. And like I said, it's only a drive across the bridge away. And in fact, don't forget, there are actually 2 major bridges that connect Washington and Oregon in that region, which are going to be Highway 205 and Highway 5. The 5 is on the west and the 205 is on the east. So you do have that access that's readily available, and I think that's a great thing. Something I've been thinking about more and more when I talk about moving and I think about relocating is I don't want to live in a big city, but I want to be city adjacent. It's this thing that I've been feeling more and more because obviously I'm always looking at the best places to live. I'm thinking about, where I might want to live one day. And I do like having some convenience because when I look at certain cities, I notice that if I want to go somewhere to a certain store, it might not be available. Let me give you an example. My wife and I were looking at a couple different places to move. Just kind of doing lifelong planning and thinking about where we might be one day. And she was looking at a city that's smaller, to the north, and she said, "Hey, this place doesn't have this store that I go to." And I thought, well, that's strange, isn't it? A kind of a bigger city? And then she mentioned another store, and she said, they don't have this place either. If we move there and I wanted to do some remodeling or update the house, I wouldn't be able to get to that place. I couldn't order from them and have the design services and have them come out and work on the place. And wow, that was like a light bulb. Ding. Right there, I realized, yeah, that reminds me once again why I want to be city adjacent. A lot of people now are talking about moving out of the city and moving into the suburbs. And while Vancouver does have its own central area, it's kind of considered a suburb of Portland in some respects. Now that doesn't mean they're the same. So if that's a concern, don't worry, we are going to touch on that. These are 2 very distinct places. Vancouver, Washington is not Portland, Oregon, but you get some of the perks, and that's really what you want, right? You want the perks of the city that's next door, or in the vicinity, if you will. For me, it's all about the convenience. How convenient is it? What is the amount of time it takes to drive somewhere or to access it by public transportation? Does public transportation even exist? I know for some people that's a concern. For others, you love to get in your car or you like to ride your bicycle, which I love to do. I love to ride my bike or ride a scooter to get somewhere. So it's all about convenience. So that's number 1. All right, now let's talk about item number 2 on the list, which is traffic. A major question that people ask me, depending on where you're coming from, of course, is what is the traffic like in Vancouver, Washington? In fact, no matter where I'm talking about, when I'm thinking of living somewhere and I'm talking to my friends or other people, they always think about the traffic. They say, well, what's it like if I have to go somewhere? Well, let's talk about it. So, regarding your work, okay, traffic is usually a concern for people when they have to commute somewhere. And since not everyone works at home and we don't even know if work at home is going to be around for every business forever, it's going to be around for some, but it might not be around for everybody. You have to factor in the traffic. And it's a good thing to think about. Now, if you work in Vancouver or one of the adjacent cities, like if you're working in Washougal, Washington, or working in Camas, which are more of bedroom communities, then you're fortunate because that means you get to live and work and play and have some fun in the same city where you actually live. But not everyone has that luxury. I think that if you move to Vancouver, there's a good chance you might be working in Portland, Oregon. So let's say you move to Vancouver, Washington, and you've got to commute to Portland, Oregon. What is that like? Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience, if you have to drive at rush hour, it's not a pleasure. I just very, very recently just drove around 4:30 p.m. from Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, Washington. And like I said, it's about 7 to 8 miles just to get to the city center. Now, if you need to go further, obviously it can be a few more miles. Well, I put it into my handy dandy little phone navigation just because I like to see how long it's going to take. And it took me 40, let's make a 40 here, 40 minutes just to drive the 8 miles from Portland City Center to Vancouver, Washington City Center. So from one downtown to the other, it took 40 minutes to go 8 miles. Okay, so what's the deal? If you have to commute every day from Portland to Vancouver, or let's say you want to live a little further out, let's say you're going from Portland to Camas, or you're going out to Washougal, or even further east to another great town out there, well, then you're going to have to factor that in. And keep in mind, obviously, it's a commute. That means you're going 2 ways. So that's going to take some time out of your day. So if traffic is a concern, there is some traffic if you have to drive at rush hour. And why is that? Is it because there are 500 million people living in one little place? Not exactly. There are a lot of people in the entire Southwest Washington and kind of Northwest Oregon area, which is commonly called the Portland Metro in this region. It's that there are only the 2 bridges to get over the Columbia River in those parts. Therefore, it's reasonable to assume that you're going to have to take one of those bridges. And it's not like they have 10 lanes on each side, right? Now, okay. If you're moving from California to Vancouver, Washington, then you might be thinking, oh, I drive on the 405 freeway, or I drive on the 91, and there's 6 or 8 lanes on each side, or 10 lanes, I think, at some point. I don't know the exact number, but it's massive. Well, it's not like that in the Northwest. You don't have 10 lanes on each side. So just keep that in mind. Of course, if you don't have to drive during rush hour, great. Now, there is one other option, which is to drive just to the border to come into Oregon and park, and then you can take public transportation because they do have the MAX train system. They have, when you're downtown, they have the streetcars and things like that. I think it's primarily a factor if you've got to work in Portland. But if you don't have to, or, perhaps you might actually work a little further south. I mean, some people work in Lake Oswego. Depending on what industry you're in, if you might have to drive down to Lake Oswego, Oregon, that's going to be even further, and that's going to be a bigger concern. But if you get to live and work in Vancouver, then I don't put traffic on the concern list at all. I don't call it a con. It's not really a big deal. I've driven all around many times during what some people would call rush hour, say, 4:30 to 6 or 5 to 6. It's not so bad. I wouldn't worry about it. So if you have that option, keep it in mind. Convenience, once again, it's a factor, right? So it's just something to keep on your list. All right, let's keep going. So now let's move on to item number 3. Since we were just talking about infrastructure a little bit with the roads, item number 3 is something I think is really important, and that is Vancouver is an up-and-coming developing city. What does that mean? All right, Vancouver has a lot of older homes, right? It's been around for a long time, and when the city of Vancouver, Washington was established, it's not a recent date. It was many years ago. So that means that you have homes that can be quite old. But the good news is you also have new homes. And you see a lot of new development, particularly along the waterfront. Now don't worry, we're gonna have a lot of images and video of the Vancouver waterfront. I spend a lot of time down there. I love going out over there. So you'll really get to see it. But here's the thing. For me, I think it's good to live in a place that's up and coming or developing or prospering or booming, whatever word you want to use, where people are moving, new restaurants are coming, new businesses are coming, and it's nice to see new buildings being developed. In fact, I was just driving around and I saw cranes. And when you see cranes, not the bird, the machine that helps build a building, you know that new buildings are coming into the city. So, for example, I was down in Esther Short Park, which is just adjacent to downtown Vancouver between the waterfront and the original downtown. And I saw a crane when I was looking over. I'm like, oh, a crane, a new building. And then when I was walking through downtown, I saw another new building. I'm like, look at this. This is great. I saw some completed buildings and I saw additional ones coming. Also, As I was looking at properties, I noticed there are some more signs up about new homes coming. And that means the city is growing. That means you're gonna get more infrastructure. And again, you also get something else with that. When people move, you have more businesses that are gonna deliver services to the people. So that gives you more options, right? You've got currently numerous supermarkets. You don't have to worry about that. You've got your Fred Meyers, you've got Safeway type of supermarkets and some other chains. So you don't have to worry about that. But what I really like is when new shopping centers pop up and new places of business that bring us entertainment. Now there's already a decent amount of theaters and things like that, but seeing new restaurants or new tea places, new coffee shops, that's the stuff that really gets me excited about a city. Also, you'll get new stores. Now I know some people think you buy everything online, but when you move, for example, you're often going to home repair stores. You're going to your Home Depots and your Lowe's and those types of stores, and you want to have that stuff conveniently located. It's great also if you can support local hardware stores and other local businesses because they are the lifeblood of the cities. And I think of all of the cool local restaurants and local things that are in the city, and you've got some established, but you've got new ones popping up. And we're going to talk about that on another number here on my list. So let's keep going. So let's remember, number 3, once again, was the city is developing and things are coming, new buildings and new businesses, and that's exciting. Okay, let's dive into item number 4 on the list. Vancouver has a slower pace of life. Vancouver, while you often hear me reference the downtown and things like that, Vancouver, Washington generally has a slower pace of life. It's not a huge city. Sometimes when I say downtown, people who live in a big city, like if you're relocating yourself from, say, Chicago to Vancouver, Washington, yeah, you're coming from a big city. But this is a small downtown, which really just caters to the local people. It's not really a place you go work and there's hustle and bustle all the time and you're always out partying or anything like that. Vancouver has a slower pace of life. Sometimes people refer to Vancouver as Van-tucky. Now, I think that is not fair. Of course, hold on. If you're moving from Kentucky to Washington, then that might actually be a compliment. But I don't think people are always using it that way. And here's the deal. Sure, it has some older homes and older neighborhoods, but it's developing, like I said in the previous item that I was talking about. But it's developing at a reasonable pace. So you don't have a huge influx of people. And I can appreciate that. As you can tell from earlier, I don't love traffic. So having a little bit slower pace of life is nice. You have enough people, but not so many people that you can't enjoy it. And I think that's still a great opportunity. And I think that's why so many people are talking about moving to Vancouver, Washington. It's because you still get a little bit of excitement and entertainment, and you have lots of shopping and services and things that you might need in your life, but you're not bogged down by a lot of traffic and long waits, and you don't have to worry about stuff like that. In fact, I can think of times when I was in a place like, well, we could use New York City as an example, but that's a little too extreme. But I can think of times when I went somewhere and I just had to wait for things. Maybe I was in California. And like I said before, if you're coming from California to Washington, especially Southwest Washington, then this is going to seem like a huge change if you're coming from Northern California or Southern California. You Central Californians might feel a little bit differently, but the pace of life, the fact that you don't have to always wait for something, and the fact that you can just go do what you need to do in a convenient way is really nice. I think it's actually a very good balance, because sometimes when you go somewhere that has a slow pace of life, you find yourself to be bored, perhaps. Now, sure, that depends on what you want to do. If you're retired and you just want to golf all day and then come home and maybe barbecue, I understand. Maybe you're looking for that. But I think that a lot of people are looking for things to do in their local area. So Vancouver offers a lot of things to do, but again, without these huge waits of bigger cities. So for example, think about perhaps a time you went on vacation somewhere. Maybe you went on vacation to Las Vegas and you went to a restaurant that was good and you wanted to go there, and then they said, hey, do you want to come back in 45 minutes or an hour? And you just cringed and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to wait like an hour? I've already waited just to come here. So a really good example for me is when I go to eat at Korean barbecue restaurants. I love those places. If you haven't tried some, you've got to try it. It's so delicious. And there's a Korean barbecue in Vancouver. And when I went over there, I noticed that they didn't have 50 people waiting outside. You could just go eat there. But I think of times I've had Korean barbecue in Las Vegas, for example, or even when I went up to Seattle, Washington, and I had food up there, I had to wait. And it wasn't a 2-minute wait or a 3-minute wait where they were just prepping the table. You're talking about 45 minutes to an hour or more. And you know, that's a different speed of life, and that's just a different environment. So I think Vancouver, Washington offers a really good balance. And not just Vancouver. Here's the thing. I also like to go to Camas, Washington and Washougal, Washington. And don't worry, the team can show you places over there too, because you have a lot of options in those neighborhoods as well. They're close to Vancouver, but they have their own main streets. And if you're like me, you love that Main Street USA, or what I like to call a micro downtown, or the local walkable neighborhood. Both Washougal and Camas have places you can go to. That's an even slower pace of life because you don't have a ton of businesses around there in those cities. You don't have traffic, of course, as we mentioned, but you can still go down there and have a great evening. You can go to dining, you can, go grab a drink or maybe see a show or do something like that. And you have those little places too. And they have a slower pace of life than Vancouver, but maybe you're looking for something like that, which is something I'm often thinking of too. How do I say this? I don't want to be bored to the point that I have nothing to do. Now, of course, we all have to work. We have our home lives, and maybe you have a family and you have kids, or you have all these things you have to deal with. But what's really great is just having options. And you do get local options. And I think that is something to consider when you're moving somewhere. So there's a balance. There's too slow, there's too fast and too much traffic, and then there's just right. And that's what I'm looking for when I talk about a city, when I think about a place to move. I'm looking for just right. And that is something that I'm seeing here. All right, are you ready to keep going? Let's keep going through the list. We've got so much more to cover. The next topic on the list is going to be something that you always think about when you're moving to the Pacific Northwest. So whether you're moving to Vancouver, Washington, or you're moving to Portland, Oregon, we have to talk about number 5, the weather. Yes, the weather is a factor almost everywhere you move. There are just a few places in the country where I can say to myself, that place has great weather pretty much all the time. And I'm gonna tell you, Vancouver and Portland and all these surrounding cities, you get rain, all right? It's the Pacific Northwest. So what do you get there? You get 2 things in the big cities. You get a lot of great coffee shops, and you get gray, rainy weather in the winter. So how gray is it? Well, there are days when you don't see the sun come out for a few days. And it's something you might have to adjust to. Now, if you're coming from somewhere really hot, you might love it. I actually can appreciate the cold. Coming from Las Vegas, Nevada, where it's a desert and it's generally quite warm, I like the rain, I like the cold quite a bit. Now, it's not freezing cold, it doesn't snow, for example. It could snow. I'm not gonna say it never snows. It has snowed, but it's not a significant factor right now. But in Vancouver, you are going to have rainy weather in the winter. It's not a secret. And sometimes the winter lasts more than 3 months. So that's something you'll have to be prepared for. But let's flip the coin. What do you get on the other side? Amazing summers, okay? The summers are awesome. The summers are so great. There are so many summer festivals. You can go hiking. You have all those outdoor activities, which I think I might need to make a whole video just about what the fun parts are about living in Vancouver, Washington, or that whole region. But seriously, the summers are great, okay? I think a lot of people get really excited for the summer. Like I said, you've got festivals, you've got other events that go on, you've got a great time to go out on the river. There's so much to do on the river, right? You can go out jet skiing. There are a lot of little boats you can take out there. Of course, you also have a lot of lakes, right? You are in the Pacific Northwest, so you have all these great lakes. I like to hike around the lakes. I know other people love to go fishing. If you're into fishing, there are so many opportunities to go fishing. And if you're an all-weather type of person, well, then you'll be able to get the right gear. There's this thing someone told me the first time I went up to the Pacific Northwest. They said, Dave, listen, it's not about the wrong weather, it's about the wrong clothing. And I remember, since I grew up somewhere where it was much warmer, I never understood, for example, why people have these big puffy jackets. And I think about the outdoorsy stores, which actually make a lot of cool apparel for outdoor weather. I used to always think about them, and I look at these stores and I think, well, I just go there to buy shorts, or I just want to, get some shorts with pockets, because they're outdoors stores, so they would offer you, maybe not cargo shorts or something like that, perhaps. But here's the deal. I see these huge jackets, and I'm thinking, well, who needs this? What is the purpose of this jacket that says it can be negative 20 degrees? Like, who's doing that? We're not hiking Kilimanjaro, or, well, that's not a good example. We're not hiking Mount Everest. But then I went up to the Pacific Northwest, and winter came. And then I got one of those jackets, and I said, whoa, this down jacket thing, it makes it so I don't feel the cold at all. It blew my mind, and here's why. Some of these jackets are super thin, but somehow they keep you amazingly warm. So if you don't like the cold at all, get the right clothing. It will change your life. If you wear jeans a lot, there are all these jeans that have down in them and flannel and other things. So in that part of the winter, it might be a concern. You just get some new clothes, you get a jacket, probably have a heater in your car, you get a heater in your house, or I assume you'll have one, then it won't be a big deal. But you really get to look forward to the spring and the summer, which are great times. Now, if you absolutely just can't live in the rain and you just don't ever want there to be any rain, well, then Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, all these neighborhoods might not be for you. You want to make sure that you can cope with some rain. But since a lot of us work indoors during the day, I think that it's not such a big deal during the day. It's really the weekends when you want to get out, you want to get out after work, and that's when it might be a little bit of a factor. So the weather, not great in the winter, but not snowy. On the other hand, amazing in the summer. And there's so many outdoor things to do in the summer. It's not like you're moving to Wisconsin or Montana or Canada where they have a lot more snow. You don't have that problem. So you can drive still in the weather, and it's not such a big deal. All right, let's keep going through the list. Okay, let's move on to item number 6. That is, Vancouver has a downtown. Now, you've heard me talk before, probably in other videos as well, and in this video a little bit about entertainment and convenience and things like that. Well, that's something that I like. I like when you have a little centralized area, we'll call it downtown. They do call it downtown, it's called Vancouver downtown. Oh, and don't forget, there's also Uptown Vancouver, which is further up Main Street. And I like it. You know, I was meeting some friends there for dinner, and we went to one place, and we stopped and we had a little fun first, and we got a little snack, and then we talked for a minute. We actually played pinball, which I haven't done for a very long time. That's one cool thing that I see in the Northwest, by the way. I don't know if they have this wherever you're coming from, but I don't come from a place where they have pinball still, but it's really cool when you go to like a bar or a restaurant or a cafe and they have these pinball machines. It just reminds me of being a kid. It's just so fun. But anyway, we went to a couple different places. You know, we went to one place before dinner, then we went to dinner, then we took a little walk, and then we also went and got some dessert. It was so fun. It reminds me of being in a city without being in a big city. So I like that convenience of having a downtown. And as I was walking from one destination to the other, I was reminded, hey, there's a little theater over here, another theater over here, there's a gym, there's a lot of different things. And if you want to know more about the downtown in Vancouver, don't worry. I'm doing a full vlog of downtown Vancouver where I'm walking around, I'm going to tell you all about it, and probably get you a little excited. But on top of that, you have the downtown, and then also you have a lot of other commerce in other places in the city. So there are some things that you're probably not going to find in downtown, right? You're not going to find your local supermarket. You might go in your neighborhood. Or you might not find your home goods store or your furniture store or your home repair stores and things like that. But that's okay. I think of downtown as not a place necessarily just to go to work, although you might do that, but also the place where you go on Friday night, or where you go on the weekend, or where you go with your friends and your family, and if you have guests in town. It's nice to have this centralized area where you can just park and go. If you're lucky, you might be able to ride your bicycle, or you might be able to walk somewhere and then just pop right into the downtown or uptown area, which is really cool. On top of that, you've got the Vancouver waterfront. And the Vancouver waterfront is actually walkable from downtown. Now remember, when I say waterfront, we're not just talking about a place on the water. It's this beautiful new development with these great restaurants. I've tried a bunch of them. I've tried their happy hours where they have some great deals on food. I've tried the seafood. I've tried quite a few places. There's a place that sells like an ice cream or frozen yogurt and milkshakes along the water. It's really cool. The neighborhood also has some new wine bars. For now, remember, that's not actually downtown Vancouver. That's called the Vancouver waterfront. But one day, I think that they might change the names. This is purely a guess here, but I could see them calling that the downtown area one day, and then maybe we call the other part Old Town. Who knows where that's going? But if you remember what I mentioned earlier, is that I like to see development. I like to see growth in a city. And what they've done there is, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, okay? You get these newer buildings. Some are, well, they're bigger buildings, right? You have apartments and things there. You have a hotel coming on board. You've got restaurants, but they still kept a traditional style, which is nice. It's kind of like a modern / traditional style. And you do get that in the downtown, pardon me. See, I already did it. You get that down at the waterfront. So you've got the downtown, the waterfront, and the uptown neighborhood, which is further up from downtown. Obviously, it's called uptown, right? So you have all that area. And I was just thinking, wow, this is great. This is all I really need to hang out, to have some fun on the weekend. They're opening more and more businesses over there. Obviously, with everything that happened in the world, you had some slowness, and of course, some businesses left, some people retired, there were some vacancies. Yeah, that happens. But I saw a lot of energy there just the other day, and I've been there quite a few times lately to get some food. I went to a coffee shop. If you're watching my other videos, you know that I do like that environment where you can go to a coffee shop and maybe work on your laptop for a minute, or you can play on your phone, but if you do anything on the internet, or you have to send a few emails for work, or hey, maybe you want to make a video about a city, maybe you go to the coffee shop. It's cool. So yeah, I think that is a major pro, by the way, having a downtown area, a main street, if you will. Like I said earlier, Main Street USA, or the walkable area. I think that's great. And I think that's something that you want in your city. So you get that. That goes with some of the other things I was talking about having the pace of life, the perfect balance. I don't think there's anywhere in the world that's absolutely perfect, but this gives you a nice balance. You've got your residential neighborhoods all over the place, and then you've got a central location you can go, but also you have your local commerce. So it's a good mix. That's why I'm putting it on the list. I think it's something that you should definitely know about. In fact, it's something that I often look for. If you have some ideas as well, like put a note in the comments. Tell me about some other places that you know that kind of have a downtown without being a huge city. Because in America, we only have a few really big cities, so to speak. So with urban centers. So if you have some places you can think of, I'd love to hear about them. Throw a note in the comments about places you know that have a downtown little city center or area where people go that's really fun and enjoyable. I can think of a few others, but I'm gonna save those for another video. All right, we're coming to the end of the list. Let's keep going. So we've got one more item to discuss. Are you ready? Okay, that's item number 7. The politics. Now, a common question that I get is Vancouver, Washington like Portland, Oregon? And the simple answer is no. Vancouver is not Portland, Oregon. The river that divides Vancouver and Portland, Oregon is the Columbia River. In fact, you could possibly say that there's a second river that divides it if you want to count the Willamette River. But the Columbia is that one that you drive over the bridges. And here's the deal. The politics of Vancouver, Washington are very different than what goes on in Portland, Oregon. So if that's a concern for you and you're not looking for the Portland, Oregon type of politics, Vancouver is totally different. You see a lot of different things there. You can talk to people and you feel the clear divide between how people think. And hey, that's what's great about living in America, right? We can think totally different things and we can all have different opinions and we can all still get along and love each other. And that's what I love. So you can literally tell sometimes by the clothing people wear, what you see on their t-shirts. You can tell by watching the news, what comes up in the news, of course. And you can hear it when people talk. And you can also tell by how the cities look. The way Vancouver looks and what you see going on there, totally different than what you see going on in Portland, Oregon. So when you watch my videos, the reason you hear me talking about Portland, Oregon when I'm talking about Vancouver, Washington is the proximity, right? It's 8 miles away. In some places, it might be a little further, might be a little closer, but that's approximately how far it is when you're going over Interstate 5. And again, it's like two different worlds. You can tell when you're driving down the freeway, just what you see on the sides of the freeway. You can tell all that stuff. You can tell by the flags that you see flying. You can tell by like I said, the clothing people wear, what they have on their shirts, what they're promoting, if you will. You can tell sometimes by the bumper stickers. There are little things that, you can tell there's a difference. But the reason I talk about it, it's the proximity. And here's the thing. If you live in Vancouver, there's a good chance you're going to go to Portland. Listen, you've got tax-free shopping, you've got a ton of stores, and you have a great downtown dining scene there, and entertainment in general. Portland, of course, has the Pearl District, where you've got a lot of food. You've got just general downtown. You might want to go hiking. If you're an outdoors person, you might cross over from Oregon to Washington all the time to go to different lakes, to go to the mountains. Like I said in another video, one beautiful thing about living in Vancouver is your proximity to other places that you can go have outdoors fun or small towns you can visit. So for example, if you're in Vancouver, Washington, and you want to drive out to Astoria, Oregon, and you want to get some seafood out there, or you want to go to Cannon Beach for vacation, or maybe you want to go to Mount Hood, yeah, those are in Oregon. Now, the interesting thing is, I think about when I was talking to someone about driving to Hood River, it's a city in Eastern Oregon off Interstate 84, is some people told me, oh, I drive on the Washington side, when other people said, oh, I take 84 on the Oregon side. I mean, talk about a divide, right? You're literally taking two different roads that are separated by the Columbia River. But you know what's cool? Both of them are scenic. I have driven along the Washington side and I have driven along the Oregon side. I love when I'm driving on the Washington side, and I stopped in Stevenson, Washington. It's on the way. It's between, again, Vancouver and Hood River. It's a cute little town. I stopped and I got some soup, and my wife and I, we sat out and we ate along their waterfront, along the river. I have so many pictures of us at the river over there, but I don't think you want to see my scrapbook, so I'll just tell you about it. Both sides, you have lots of cute little towns you can visit, and you have restaurants and breweries, and just something scenic that you might want to stop off. Again, if you're an outdoors person, you've got fishing, hiking, you could go canoeing, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, all kinds of stuff. And if you're not an outdoors person, which just, I didn't used to be that guy. I used to be, let's go play in front of our computer guy and make videos, or let's just, be on the internet all the time. Well, something happens when you come up to the Pacific Northwest. You're surrounded by natural beauty. And if you've never seen it before, it's amazing, and it grows on you, and it's hard to leave it. So no matter what side of the fence you're on, if you will, the beauty here, it arches over everything, and it's wonderful. But I wanted to touch on that issue because people have asked that question, because they'll look on the map and they'll say, oh, Vancouver, Washington, it's like a few inches on the map away from Portland, Oregon. Sure, But there are a lot of places in America where you have a city that has one point of view and you have another city that has another point of view, and they could be very close to each other. I see that when I look at places like Georgia, I look at New York or New Jersey. You see that even happening in Las Vegas. You see that, well, in California, you're used to that. You're used to saying, well, this part of the state thinks one way, but this part thinks another. I hear about Colorado where people talk about separating the states. It's so different. But one major advantage of choosing Vancouver, Washington, and you probably know this if you watch my other videos, was there's no state income tax on that side of the river. And that is, look, on the pros and cons list, let's just move that right on up there, right? No state income tax. What a plus. But hey, what do they have in Portland, Oregon? Do you remember? No sales tax. So you've got a lot of different options. And we're excited to actually talk to you about all of them. So that's why I wanted to create this list. But let's talk about all these options you have. So, like I said, you've got a lot of options, okay? If you're looking at Portland, Oregon, there's a good chance you're watching this video because you want to know what it's like to move to Vancouver, Washington. And after you watch these videos, you might be asking yourself, hey, do I want to live in Portland, Oregon? Don't worry, we've got your back through the whole thing. The team would love to help you wherever you want to move, whether you want to move to Southwest Washington, whether you want to move to Portland, Oregon, or anywhere in Oregon or Washington, reach out to us. Make sure that you send us an email. You can send a text message, and don't forget, you can pick up the phone. It's okay. We still like to talk. You can give us a call 24/7. Let us know what you're looking for. Are you looking for a certain lifestyle? Are you looking for a little more excitement? Are you looking for a house with some land where you can work on your land or just have it for gardening and growing things and other fun stuff? Or are you looking for a smaller town feel? Like I said, Washougal and Camas offer you a smaller town feel. We're going to definitely be doing a video on these places, so don't worry. But Camas offers you a lot of upscale houses as well. So if you're looking for what I like to call these upper echelon houses, where you want to live along the beautiful Columbia River, and it is beautiful. I was literally just thinking that yesterday. I was thinking, wow, look at the sun shimmer along the river. It's beautiful. If that's what you're looking for, just let us know. If you're coming up to this region, then we want to help you. The team wants to help you with this stuff. It's such a beautiful place. You hear me say it all the time. And let me just tell you the reason I keep saying it's beautiful. It's because coming from Las Vegas in the desert, we don't have trees there. You have cactus, and you have some trees, which might be imported. You have palm trees, but it's nothing like seeing evergreen trees. I mean, people, when you see this, if you haven't lived it, it's just great. And so, you know, when I travel around the country, I mean, I've traveled around the world, there are so few places I've ever seen that had so many beautiful trees and lakes and water features that when I leave, it's something that I miss. And I'm shocked by that because, like I said, I used to be that guy who just wanted to stay indoors all the time. I mean, sure, I'd ride my bike, or I have an e-scooter, which is awesome. If you could ever get one, they're great, a lot of fun. They're really reasonable now. But not like today. Today, I want to get outdoors. I think part of that comes from working from home. So if you do work from home now, or you haven't transitioned back to your office, living in Vancouver, Washington is pretty cool because you have a lot of convenient things right when you leave your house. You'll be able to just access, food and entertainment pretty quickly. So that wraps up my 7 things that you really have to know all about living in Vancouver, Washington. Now, don't forget, once again, I want to make sure that you reach out to us if you're thinking about relocating to Vancouver, if you're thinking about relocating to Portland, Oregon, if you're thinking about moving to any of the small towns in Washington. And we even have contacts if you want to move further up north in Washington. If you're thinking about Seattle, let us know too. We'll be happy to help you get in touch. So just send me an email. And if you're a texter, no problem, text away. Send us a text message, just get in touch with us and we will help you. All right, everybody, until the next video, thanks again for watching. I can't wait to tell you even more. Take care.